changes the temperature in the lower American. They're saying that when they get through with the dam project, it's not going to leak anymore, and the water temperature problem is going to be solved. And that's why we were just able to obtain the 8,500 acre-feet of water that we've been trying to obtain for 10 years, which is a spinoff of Project at 184, which is the 2112 water. They granted us a 5-year lease. Normally these leases are 50 to 99 years, which is considered a permanent lease. But they granted us a 5-year lease, anticipating the fact that in 5 years the dam's going to be fixed and the lower American River water problem is going to be solved.
Yeah, they're also that we can prove in that 5 years that our 8,500 acre-feet is not going to affect the water temperature of 1,000,000 acre-feet.
Yeah.
Bureaucracy at its finest. But
calculators. So we haven't tried to do that over these 26 years?
We've tried to convince them that
No, I mean through a court.
we've done everything you can.
It's a congressional action. It was done
This
Fazio said, okay, we're going to
This is
allocate this water if we don't build the Auburn Dam.
Yeah, that was supposed to be the substitute. You're going to get this because you didn't get this.
So, I have a question. I'm not a hydrologist or a biologist or anything. I'm just a history major. But when Cabrillo sailed up to the coast of California and discovered California, he sailed into San Francisco Bay and sailed down to Fresno and up to the peaks of Marysville. And they sounded the depth, and it was 100 feet deep. And where'd all the water go?
Well, first of all, this is another thing that's really kind of weird. Because remember, we have the BDCP, the Bay Area Delta Conservation Plan, and we've got, what's the other, I forget the name of the tunnels.
Which one?
We've got the BDCP, and then we've got the other agency that's with the tunnels. Anyway, we've got, yeah, and so, what is it? It's,
you're talking about the Bay Delta. I'm thinking, now you got me.
Anyway, this whole project is that we're going to restore the Delta. The Delta is the most engineered waterway in the world. If you wanted to restore the Delta, you'd have to tear down all those dikes, and you'd have to go back to just what you're talking about. Because originally, this ecosystem worked perfectly. Because you had snow in the mountains, which was big time storage. And then you had the Yuba, the Sacramento, the American, the Consumnes. You had all of these big watersheds that then took that storage as the storage dribbled out, and it dribbled out. It didn't come down all at once. And there was a huge marsh, and that marsh was like a giant sponge. And it took in all that water, and that was the lower storage area. And then that would go out through the Delta and just what you're talking about. So if you really wanted to restore the Delta, you'd have to do that. What they're talking about restoring is what was built by the Chinese to create farmland in the Delta, to create these islands. These islands are all below sea level. They're all below water level. It's a huge industry, and it brings a huge economy to California, and it pays big taxes. So restoring the Delta means restoring the ecology of those farmers in the Delta.
Just a little side note. We've kind of alluded to all the different agencies that the water world deals with. Just a little thumbnail sketch here. I thought I wrote down the list of agencies that we have to, on a regular basis, deal with. The State Water Resources Control Board, which is helping us with our drought. The Regional Water Quality Control Board, which is our wastewater side of things. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that drives what we do with our power plants. The state and federal health departments of health, both of them. The Environmental Protection Agency, both state and federal, which CEQA and NEPA, which are their two deals. The Bureau of Reclamation, the Fish and Wildlife Service, both federal and state. Dam safety, both federal and state. The U.S. Forest Service, and El Dorado County, and to a little bit Sacramento County. And that's not all of them, but those are the ones that we deal with on a regular basis, that we have to go through their processes. Right now, today, we are trying to get our releases out of Caples Lake. Everybody know where Caples Lake is? 8,000 feet, one of our high altitude lakes, reservoirs. We're trying to get our fish flow releases cut back to what it was done before we got our energy license. It was 2 CFS, which worked for years, but the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission made us raise it to 5 for fish flows. We're trying to get it back to 2 to hold that water up there to be released during the summer, so we can divert it into Sly Park or use it out of Project 184 and bring it down. 5 agencies we've got to get approval from, and we've been trying for a month and a half, and still today have not gotten a release from it, and the water keeps flowing. This is the bureaucracy that we deal with, and you wonder why. And then you see all this stuff going on, and your point about the fish, the 6 fish, is absolutely apropos. Put them in a gallon bucket, take them down the river, and throw them back into the river, and why spend 1 billion gallons of water to do it? But this is the kind of stuff we have to deal with. And I don't think people really realize that everybody in the world has got I used to be in the fire business. I was the chief of Cal Fire before I retired. I thought the fire business was regulated. It ain't hold a candle to the water business.
They tell us how much water we can keep in the reservoirs, how much we can let out, what our flows are. It's mind-boggling.
I have a question about the flow. I live near Folsom Lake, and you've seen this website before, right?
I don't know. I had eye surgery. I can't see jack.
Wait, it's a government site. It's cdec.water.ca.gov. And what it does, it shows the inflow and it shows the outflow.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of OCD as far as looking at it, because there's idiots, absolute idiots, that are releasing the water. And you talked about that.
What you understand, they're not here. They're in Colorado.
Okay, here's my question though. Who decides on when those gates are open and how much water?
Colorado. The Bureau of Reclamation.
One person, a bunch of people?
No, the Bureau of Reclamation is not based in Colorado. It's not out there at Folsom. It's not based in California. It's not guys out there at Folsom Dam. It's bureaucrats in Colorado. That's where the Bureau of Reclamation is. And they look at the same stuff you're looking at from 2,000 miles away and decide what needs to be done. They have no vested interest in California. They're Colorado. They don't even like us.
Okay, my follow-up question is, because you told me who does it. How do they determine that? What do they use? Some kind of
the Bureau? I have no idea.
Algorithms for that? We don't know.
Again, what you have to understand, what George is talking about, all of these agencies, all of these governmental agencies, underlying that is politics. Underlying that is the politics of California. On top of that, we deal with the federal legislators and we deal with the state legislators. And right now we're dealing with the governor. But underneath all of these policies that come out of these agencies, these people are appointees. And the politics is underneath there. And then again, George's quote, where is the money and where are the votes in California?
Here's where I'm confused though, because you were talking about all the agencies you work with, right? And things work slow. But when I observe, whenever it rains, I look at the inflow and I look at the outflow. That's real-time stuff. Somebody's making real-time decisions. It's not like, let's talk about this for a week and decide what to let.
That's different. That's the Bureau of Reclamation. And they're the Bureau of Reclamation. They're the ones that control. They're the ones that got their hand on the lever. We're talking about what we have to do to affect changes with our flows out of our reservoirs. That's CVP water. This stuff gets, the book that gives you water law in California, and I've seen it, is exactly 2 inches thick. And it's written in that little tiny lawyer writing. It's not like that little tiny stuff that you see on. It's extremely complex. And just like George is explaining, the number of agencies.
In 2003, we bought Jenkinson Lake and Sly Park. Anybody not know where Sly Park is? Okay. All right. We bought that. I was involved with that negotiation. Started out at $11.5 million and bought it for $8.5 million, including the water rights. Now, the water rights, as we were talking about putting in and out, we're right today putting 65 cubic feet per second out of our upper reservoirs as fast as we can get it into Sly Park. It's up to about 80% now, almost 81, because the state does not have any control over water that's in a storage. Once it's in a storage, they only have control over the releases and the flows and the diversions. So the faster we can get it in, we're moving as much water as we could possibly do. And that was held up this year because we had a collapse on the Esmeralda Tunnel. It took 4.5 months to fix, and it's only half fixed to get it. You know, it collapsed. The whole Project 184 system was down. The whole system was, which normally in the wintertime, Project 184, your water here in El Dorado Hills comes from 8,000 feet, goes through the system and is delivered by gravity here. But all winter long, we had to pump it at a cost of about $300,000 that we normally wouldn't have had to do. But the fact that we bought Sly Park means from the federal government, it was the 13th, only the 13th local agency to buy from the Bureau of Reclamation or the Corps of Engineers a reservoir.
You forgot the Corps of Engineers when you
Here
were
we
naming
go,
the
our list.
agencies, yeah.
Yeah, Barbara Boxer held it up for, finally John Doolittle he found a bill that she had to sign and put it in there, and we got it through, and that's why there's a nice plaque. It went on and on and on. But anyway, we control the water. If we had not owned the water rights in Sly Park, they could have said, we want 5,000 acre feet to go down to Consumnes River for fish. And there wouldn't have been a damn thing we could have done about it. And we bought that. Now we're moving without any bureaucratic nonsense, which we had one time before we had to. But now we're releasing water out of Silver, Echo, and Aloha. Well, there's not much in Aloha, but we're releasing the water, diverting it into the flume, getting it in there and diverting it through the Hazel Creek Tunnel into Sly Park. We're moving 60 to 65 cubic feet per second in there to capture that water before the state jumps in and says that's ours.
See, it's our bucket, we have our own bucket. Dorman, you got it?
Yeah, I have a question about it, WAFA, and the 40,000 acre feet water rights that's being negotiated. And I guess my concern about that, because I think we're looking at $10–11 million to just go through.
Which is cheap.
Pardon?
Which is cheap.
Well, it's cheap if you actually get the water. It's really expensive if you don't.
That same argument was brought up about Sly Park. Same argument was brought up about 184. Let me explain something to you.
But they're not like.
Yeah, we had to get through FERC. We had to get through the same agencies to accomplish that.
So if you acquire those water rights, what does it actually mean? Can they be abrogated like they were last
No,
spring?
because it's stored water. What we've got are the buckets. We have an agreement with SMUD to use 4 reservoirs of the Upper American River project, which is the SMUD project, to store the water in. So we got the buckets. We actually have the rights. They're county of origin rights. What we're doing is called perfecting the water right. And if we should be successful with this. And once we have the water and it's in the reservoirs, it's stored water, nobody can tell us what to do with it. Once it's stored water, all they can do is tell you about flows and diversions and all that type of stuff. Once you have stored water, you can't, you're out from under the
So it's not rights from the watershed, it's.
stored water. It'll be sitting in those reservoirs.
One of the things we've got on a normal year, normal rainfall year, snowpack year, there's 1 million gallons of water that comes out of it goes right by our door in the South Fork of the American River, right on down. We're asking for 4% of that. That's all it is. We're asking for 4% of the water that's going by
For
there.
the 40,000.
And it goes right by our door.
You know,
40,000 acre feet.
This is a good place to, let's just stop for a minute. Let's talk about what we've got. Because there's 2 things you have to understand. There's paper water and there's real water. And you can have all the paper water in the world. You can have all the water rights you want. And if you don't have wet water, it means nothing. And you've got to make estimates about how much water you've got, real water out of that paper. There's things that are called firm flows, and there's safe flows. And these are two different ways of estimating what you're really gonna get out of there. But let's talk about what EID has right now today, where we sit. As I said, we've got 3 sources of water. We've got Project 184. Project 184 was purchased for $1. In fact, PG&E gave us $27 million to buy it because it was a completely depleted asset. It took $100 million to bring 184 back online and get it functional. Now, what is 184? Like George said, it's 4 alpine lakes. It's Cables, Silver, Echo, and Aloha. To us, in consumptive water, along with that went the consumptive water rights to 15,080 acre feet. Also, 90,000 acre feet of power generating water, plus 2 turbines in a power plant, plus a 22-mile-long aqueduct, which is made up of flumes, ditches, a siphon, tunnels to get that water from a diversion dam, which is at Silver Fork, down to Four Bay Reservoir, where we can either send it through Res A and process it and put it through our distribution pipes, or when we're not getting enough flow to use power generation water rights, we can send it through our turbines and generate power. In a normal year, we get what, 8 million? 8 million. In a wet year, we may get 10 to 20 million in revenue from that. Last year, we got 5 million. 184 right now is paying for the bonds and the $100 million in debt. It's paying the debt service. It's paying operations and maintenance of 184. It's paying for the processing of the water, the delivery of the water, and the operation and maintenance of the power plant. Once that $100 million is paid off in the next about 15 years, then it'll be generating a significant profit. It already is paying for itself, and it's already adding that much revenue to our operation and maintenance budget. This is called non-rate revenue. So let me go a little aside and tell you that EID runs 5 business lines: potable water, recycled water, wastewater, power generation, and recreation. We sell potable water, and we sell recycled water, and we charge for taking care of wastewater. The rest of our revenue comes from power generation, recreation. The key, we have built-in increases in our cost. One of the built-in increases, all right, so let's go. The most expensive thing at EID is personnel, salaries. That's number 1 on our list, on our budget. They're public employees. They're covered by PERS. That means they get a COLA every year. Nothing we can do about it. They're going to get a 1.5% minimum raise every year, no matter what. So that means in our most expensive budget item, we have an increase of 1.5% every year. Our second most expensive item is chemicals, the things that we add to the water. Okay? If you bought detergent, if you bought chlorine, if you bought anything, you know that every year it goes up a little bit. If you know about inflation, I mean, everything goes up 1%. What was the inflationary thing last year? 1.7. So you got another 1.5% that's built in there. The third most expensive thing on our budget line is power. The power. We have 62 lift stations on the wastewater side. We have 30 pumps on the potable water side. PG&E just hit us with a huge increase. 10% of our operating budget goes to PG&E. So there's some built-in cost increases there. Even if you're cutting budget down here, you still got it going up here. So how much do you have to cut down here to offset what's going on up here? Well, you get to a point where right now we're having trouble getting revenue in because we don't have enough inspectors to go out and get our hookups online and get paid for our meters, because we have to have inspectors that go out and say, okay, and then we can start getting EDUs and we can start getting money from that. So, you know,
We're
you
not
can,
building any houses anyway, so why would?
no, they're building houses. They're building houses. Listen, our FCCs are gonna go up this year. significantly. So you're cutting down here, you get to a point where you're cutting, where the cutting is actually hurting your revenues. Well, maybe a better approach is to increase your non-rate revenue. Increase your revenue from power generation, increase your revenue from recreation, and find other sources of non-rate revenue. Right now, of our operating budget, 50% of it is covered with non-rate revenue. So anyway, back to the water. So that's 15,080 acre feet. That's pre-1914 water. That's sacrosanct. No, now there's some things that can be done. You know, nothing's untouchable.
Nothing's sacrosanct.
And you know, you can get into these flow things and these reservoir level things. You can get into a lot of stuff. But basically, we get that 15,080 acre feet. The California Water Resources Control Board was created in 1914, and they have no control over water rights that were granted prior to their creation.
And some of ours go back to 1850.
Yeah, so we've got some of the most senior water rights in the state. So that's pretty good. We can figure we're gonna get that 15,000 acre feet pretty much every year, no matter what, even in a drought. And we got Jenkinson Lake. Jenkinson Lake can take, what, 40,000?
43,000.
43,000, but in reality.
Excuse me, 41,000 we draw from 23 on a normal year.
And also, you got what you call dead pool in these reservoirs. You can't pull all the water out because there's so much sediment and contaminant, you can't clean it. You can't process it and give it to people to drink. So you've got about, what, 5,000 to 7,000 acre feet at the bottom of Jenkinson Lake that we can't use anyway. And it never fills up. So we figured that we can, in a normal year, get about 22,000.
Which is about what you used, or I think delivered last year, was like 23.
Yeah, and that's why we keep trying to say we want to keep that. We want to keep Jenkinson Lake between 30 and 25,000 acre feet. That's why we're moving stuff over from 184 in order to try to keep that. That's our bank. We want to keep that. We want to keep our bank full. We don't want to get, you know, any deficits.
Yeah, there's no other bank on the hill.
Yeah, there's no other bank. If that bank isn't full, you guys turn off your faucet because you got no water. So then that's our second source of water. And then we've got Folsom Lake. And in Folsom Lake, we've got more pre-1914 water. We've got ditch water because we've got, and this is something, you know, I hear all this stuff about the farmers and ag and everything. El Dorado Hills would not exist if it hadn't been for the transfer of ditch water rights from the ditches up the hill into Folsom Lake. We transferred 4,550 acre feet of ditch water rights and water rights from Weber Creek into Folsom Lake. We had to go through a big rigmarole to do that, but we got a warrant contract to store the water in Folsom Lake and take it out. So water that was previously used for ag, that was raw water that was delivered to the farmers, was transferred into Folsom Lake to be potable water in El Dorado Hills. And that got us past.
What year? What year?
When did they transfer it?
The Weber water was late 90, early, about 2000. No, the transfer was done, I don't know, I think it's to 2004 or something like that. Early.
So the only thing that we had down here then, and the reason that Serrano was built
Don't
on
hold that
recycled
date
water,
because all these things get kind of run together after a while.
the reason we use Serrano's all on recycled water is because there wasn't enough water for El Dorado Hills. There wasn't enough water for Serrano. We had the 7,550 acre feet of project water, CVP water, but we got cut back on that every year. This year we're going to get 25% of that. Last year we got 50% of it. So we've got that ditch water. It's pre-1914 water, Weber Creek water. Now, it is restricted because we have to prove that it would have flown through the creek and flown through the ditches. In other words, you can't say I'm going to take 4,000 acre feet out if that much didn't flow through those ditches and through the creek to begin with up the
Show the
hill.
loss.
Yeah, and then you've got loss, the transfer loss. So we usually get about 3,000 acre feet out of that. Then we got the 7,550 acre feet of CVP water. We've got the Fazio water, which we can't use. So actually, El Dorado Hills, before we got the 2112 water, we only had about 8,000 to 10,000 acre feet that we got to use every year. About 8,500 was about the average
For El Dorado Hills.
for El Dorado Hills. And what we did is, because that's the most expensive water in the county, we have to pump it out of Folsom Lake. We've got 4 pumps down there. They're constantly breaking down. We have to run the El Dorado Hills Water Treatment Plant, which is the most expensive plant we have. It's the oldest one we have. It's badly in need of refurbishment. So what we would do is run El Dorado Hills during the summer, but when the winter came, shut it down, use the Gold Hill intertie, and like George said, take water from Jenkinson Lake and run it down to El Dorado Hills. We can put anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 feet through the Gold Hill Tunnel. Last year we put 2,000 acre feet. In a normal year we'd put 3,000 or 4,000 through. But getting the 2112 water, which was part of Project 184, gave us 8,500 acre feet of 1927 water, county of origin water. It's a very good senior right, and it's stored water. And it's not CBP water. Yeah, in Folsom. So now we can pull that water for El Dorado Hills. We can pull that 8,500 acre feet. That leaves us what we get from the ditch water and the Weber Creek and the CBP water that's excess water in Folsom Lake for El Dorado Hills, and we can't do anything with it. We cannot do anything because we can get water down through the Gold Hill intertie, but we don't have pumps to pump it back up.
What about the old Bass Lake? Is there any value in there at
No,
all?
the water, you can't clean the water. You can't, it's too
I
turbid.
mean, even if they dried it all out and shipped the stuff out of
It's
there
too
and all.
turbid, it's not worth it. So we've got water, we've got excess water in a drought, and it's very simple. We use it or we lose it. If we don't use it, it becomes known as abandoned water. So if we use it, great. If we don't use it, we lose it. If we lose it, someone else takes it. So what will happen is the Bureau of Reclamation will take it and they'll sell it. So either we sell it or they sell it.
So what happens if you're looking at a 10-year drought like we did in Australia?
That's why we need this water that we're talking
Like
about.
Wafa water?
Yeah, because here's what we can do. Even, and we talked about this at EDWAPA today. Okay, let's say they cut us back and say, all right,
Did you pass?
WAP is the El Dorado County
Yeah,
Water and
Water
Power
Power
Authority.
Did that pass today?
it's actually the SMUD water. Yeah, that was just an MOU. So here's the deal. Let's say that they cut us back and they say, you only can use 1/3 of an acre foot per person residential. Fine. We have to deal with that. The way that's measured is it's measured coming out of our processing plants. That has nothing to do with what we store. If we've got more water rights and we've got stored water, especially if we can bleed that water into Jenkinson Lake or someplace else, that water sits there. So we could have a 20-year drought and we bleed it out at 1/3 of an acre a resident per year, but we're not going to go dry. And if they decide to build this county out, we've got the water to do it. If they decide to build this county out and we don't do that, we don't have the water. Because if you take what we've really got in Folsom Lake, even if you take a normal year where we get 6,000 acre feet out of the CBP water, we get 8,500 feet, we get 14.5, you know, we got 20,000 acre feet there, 20 here, that's 40, we got 55,000 acre feet in a normal year that's real water.
It's not water rights, it's water.
That's real water in a normal year. It's
And
not,
another piece
we've
of
got
that-
more water rights than that, but that's what we really got to
But the
use.
CVP water is probably problematic.
Anything in Folsom is problematic. There's too many straws in there, there's too much regulation.
Right.
By getting the SMUD water, we get out of there. We get in the upper Sacramento.
Get out of it.
Yeah, we're in the upper
We'll divert
Sacramento
it. We
project.
won't divert it in Folsom, we'll divert it up the river, so they're not in Folsom.
Yeah. The
So
only
we
thing
have
we
no
do is pass
control.
it through Folsom to sell it. And we can sell it. We're selling water at EID, the water I just talked to you about. Now we have to name it something else. For $700 an acre foot. So what if we sold 10,000 or 20,000 acre feet? Because that's what Westlands buys water. Westland wants to buy 20,000 acre feet or 30,000 acre feet blocks. So you're worried about spending $8 million and actually it's split 3 ways. So let's say
Well,
we
what you
spend
ex-
12.
Well, yeah, but I mean, my understanding is it was water rights, not water.
No, it's water.
I'm very suspicious of water rights.
Okay, but
this is
here,
water. This
here,
is the
here,
bucket. We got the bucket.
here's the real issue. And say for the sake of argument, we get our water application of 40,000 acre feet, or whatever we finally win out of it. Okay, so they cut back and say, okay, you're only gonna get half of it. or a quarter of it. If you got 40,000 acre feet, we get 10,000, which we wouldn't get anyway.
I understand that. So, but it's water, not water rights.
It's water,
It's
it's water
water,
rights, but
physical
this is
water.
wet water.
Pardon?
Remember, it's stored water and it's smud water. Now, the only thing we have to do is we abrogate some power.
Right, we have to pay power for gone.
Yeah, we're gonna have to pay some power foregone to SMUD, because we're gonna be using that water rather than, SMUD's water rights are all for power generation.
Right.
So
So you
they're
have
gonna
to
be
reimburse them for
basically
the-
giving us some space for water for consumption, which will displace their water for power generation.
You have to pay for that.
Well, it's not huge though.
It's about $50 an acre.
Yeah.
Can I change it a little bit? Now what about flood irrigation? Oh, is that still going on real heavy? I know down in Central Valley it is, and I
It
know.
needs to stop. If you're gonna tell the residents in this state to cut their water back, then those farmers in Central Valley are gonna have to start doing what our farmers do. They're gonna have to go to drip, they're gonna have to go to an IMS system, they're gonna have to stop overhead irrigation, they're gonna have to stop flood irrigation. And that, so far, they're not being told that. The reason is they've got groundwater. Our farmers don't have any groundwater. You cut our farmers back 30%, you kill Apple Hill. $440 million of the economy in this county, it's gonna take a huge hit. And that's number two. By the way, Darwin, we don't manufacture anything in this county, especially not $600 million worth. I've checked into that extensively.
The what?
Our number one economy in this county is construction. That's number
Right.
one.
Right.
Number
Number
two
two
is
is
ag. Number three is recreation, and below that, there's nothing.
Yeah.
So that's tax dollars. Apple Hill generates, when you look at the multipliers, they had 750,000 visitors a couple of years ago. They expect to hit 1 million. They get about $20 a visitor. Then there's a 5 multiplier. People buy gas, food, and everything else in the county. That generates about $100 million just out of Apple Hill. Our sales tax is 7.5%. That's $7.5 million that goes into the coffers of the county. You kill Apple Hill, everybody in this county loses $7.5 million worth of services.
So how does that, well, this is off the subject a little bit, but how does that jive with the economic report that they did at Chico State for the county?
I have no idea. This comes from the state of California. It comes
I've looked
from
at that.
our Chamber of Commerce. It comes from our County Board of Supervisors. I don't know what Chico did, but Chico's Chico. This is El Dorado County. There's a website where every county in the state of California
Yeah, I know what that was.
is, the state of California puts out their economic picture.
We're asked quite often, if we were state of Jefferson here today, and the state of Jefferson says to you, what can we do to help you? How would that affect your job?
Can you give me a list of those bureaucracies?
Are you still locked in with those
Well,
bureaucracies?
the federal one, we would have no escape from the federal bureaucracy. It would still, but this,
Yeah.
it might be a start from this, getting rid of the burdens of the state bureaucracy. What I forgot, I don't know if I mentioned dam safety. Did I mention?
Oh, yeah, dam safety.
Dam safety. We have a multitude of dams. And the federal government and the state government, they don't even agree on what the hell we're supposed to do. And so we have to meet both of their objectives. And we actually hired away the engineer from the state dam safety, Department of Dams,
The damn safety guy?
and hired him away because he was the expert in how to take care of these things. Now, for example, we've got to rebuild, Four Bay Reservoir was built in 1923. It's never been a problem. But we are mandated now to rebuild it. And
By the feds or the state?
by the state this time.
Dam safety.
And it's never been a problem. There's nothing downstream that, except maybe a couple fishermen that might get caught if the damn thing all went at one time. But we've got to spend well over $11 million
I thought it was
to
up to
rebuild
18.
it. Well, but we're gonna raise, while we're at it, we're doing all this construction, we're gonna raise it 10 feet. We'll increase our power generation considerably, capabilities, about $380,000 a year in generation, we estimate. And it will increase our water supply retention by instead of a day and a half use in the summer, up to about 4 days. But, so while we're doing this work, we're gonna add the extra work to doing it, but we've got, I mean, just that's why today, if you were to go buy it, it's only at 50% capacity. That's the only reason we can, the maximum we can hold it, because dam safety said that's what we have to do.
If you read my report, I'll get you, if you read my report, one of the first thing it said is we ignored all of the regulatory agencies for a number of years.
Yeah.
And then we had to comply because they were fining us $10,000 a day, was it? And they gave us a cease and desist order, which means we're gonna shut you down. Cost us $120 million to do catch up to get that done. EID's debt got up to $420 million. $120 million came from that. $100 million came from not doing the maintenance and replacement that should have been done. George was involved. Tell them about what happened with the build out of the wastewater treatment plant.
Oh, yeah, when we
Which one?
in 2007, we expanded the wastewater treatment. You know, these kind of things take from right down El Dorado Hills wastewater treatment plant. From, you know, it takes 5 years from the time you start thinking about doing it till you get through the design work, all the permit people and all of this stuff to get it done. But we actually cut it back 50% because we kept being told, you know, it's slowing down, it's slowing down. Well, nobody expected it to stop. I mean, literally stop. There was no building for about 2 years. And so here we are with this treatment plant with this capacity. It's being used up now as more and more buildings come along. So, but these things are horribly, that was $53 million, that expansion.
$30 million.
One of the things that we have to do that drives our cost is that because we're a government agency, we have to pay prevailing wage. And prevailing wage drives our cost, our labor costs up about 30 to 35%. Now, if you are a private builder and you're gonna build yourself a house and you go down and you hire, and I'm not picking on anybody in particular, I'm taking this as a for instance, please take it as that. You go down and hire yourself a plumber and you pay him $35 an hour. He's a happy camper.
That's cheap.
It's a prevailing wage job, you're gonna pay him $55 an hour. And that ripples through the whole, now you talk about dealing with the legislature, we had a report Monday on all of it, about a quarterly of all the bills that could affect us, and we take a position on it. One of them was that guys that drive cement trucks would be paid prevailing wage if they're working on a government project.
You know, one of the things.
And how do you deal with that? The guy goes from this job and he's getting $20 an hour for driving a truck, and then he goes over here and works on a wastewater treatment plant or a highway job or something like that. You go to $32 an hour.
I'll get to your questions, but to add on to that, one thing you have to understand about EID, it's not a government agency. It's a public-owned utility, which means this: the customers and the owners are the same thing. You own EID. You elect idiots like George and I, and Greg back there, to run it for you, a board of directors, okay? There's a fine line that you have to walk. There's a fine line between making EID this cushy place where the staff and the general manager and everything are driving Rolls Royces and have, you know, Cadillac plans, and you're gouging the customer, and the point where you've cut it so far that the customer is not getting the service. We have some of the best water in the state. So it's a balancing act, you know, it's a balancing act. And you are the customer and the owner. You know, you talked about socialism, you got it right here. EID is socialism. Publicly owned utilities are socialism. So we're all in this together. The three of us are customers, just like you are. I get emails saying, you know, are you going to raise my rates? Are you going to? And I email back and say, no, I'm paying. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm paying the rates too. Are you going to do this? You idiot. Well, the bottom line is, we're not the idiots. There's a lot of idiots over here, but we're not the idiots, you know. But we're forced to do things because of what the idiots make us do. You two guys had questions.
Are you aware of any of the water purveyors getting a letter from State Water and Resources Board regarding no more water meter hookups?
No.
I didn't catch the last part of it.
She's saying, the State Water Resource Control Board saying there'll be no more hookups.
No.
No.
Okay, because I heard today of a county that has received a letter, and it appears that they're more in the rural and not urban areas.
No, we haven't. And
I'm
that
not
would be a
urban.
real overstep for the state
Well,
board to do.
that was the second part of my question.
Yeah.
Because there are questions about the legality of
Yeah,
that.
that'd be a real overstep.
Yeah, but what really concerns us is the state board staff. Fortunately, the board itself is a little more realistic, but the staff keeps pushing, trying to erode on these water rights from the senior rights on down. Most of our water rights are senior, pre-14, and see, if they try to mess with the pre-14 rights, there'll be a lawsuit hit the state about the next morning, because there's
And
a
people will
whole
be
bunch
lined
of
up, every water
pre-14
purveyor
rights
that
over.
holds
And that, those are
right would be
sacred,
lined
but
up with it.
but, and he's alluded to, what our concern is that the allocation of the appropriation process is statutory, not constitutional. 53% of the legislature lies below the Tehachapis. And if all of a sudden their valves go instead of all of a sudden we could have some real problems on our hands, and we will be in court. My third grandson wants to be an attorney. I said, be an attorney, be a water rights attorney. You never hear of them, they're all rich. And they're never out of work.
The other thing that was interesting about this is the letter was dated October 7th of last year, and it was just received.
This sounds like an urban legend. I'd want to see the letter, and I'd want to talk to the state board and say, did you send this? And I mean, I don't know, I can't see that being realistic.
Dale, can you go through the basics of what it is that drives the cost of water to the customer? For instance, in El Dorado Hills, we're paying a certain rate, the farmers are paying a rate. What all goes into that?
Well, there's a cost of service study, but let's just back up and talk about, first of all, each water district is very unique, and George can talk about this even more than I can, but every water district is unique. So it's very difficult to go out and say, well, these people in Folsom are paying this, and these people in here are paying that, and so on and so forth. So that's why you have these cost of service studies. But when you look at our water district, you've got to understand this. In the west, Echo Summit and Cables Lake, in the east, Echo Summit and Cables Lake, at 7,000 and 8,000 feet, almost on the border of the county in the west, is where our furthest assets are in the west.
In the
east. The east.
Good
In the
lake.
north, it's Folsom Lake, the South Fork of the American River, and all its tributaries. In the west, it's past the county line. We have 175 acres where we're responsible for the assets, and we're going to actually be responsible for delivering water to about 200 homes in the south of 50 project. Because and actually, Brian Veerkamp, there's some stuff that went on at the Board of Supervisors that kind of got us hooked into that. In the south, it goes down to Outingdale. We have 3 large water treatment plants, 2 large wastewater treatment plants. We have 2 small water treatment and wastewater treatment plants, Outingdale and Strawberry. We have, because we go from 8,000 feet to below 1,000 feet, we've got 6,000 or 7,000 feet that goes like this, okay? So we have 62, now we used to have 63, but now we've got 62 what they call lift stations. What that does is take the sewer and lift it up and deliver it in pipes that can get it to the sewer treatment plants. We've got 30 potable water, 30-something potable water pumps. That means we have, if you go down to Folsom, you'll take a line, a distribution line, and it may have 1,000 houses on it. We literally have distribution lines that have about 10 or 12 houses on them. and it may be on the other side of a hill. So we've got to get the water up and over that hill and to them. So when you're in a, it's like anything else. I mean, I'm sure people in this room are business people. What do, man? You concentrate your assets, and it's a hell of a lot cheaper to deal with them. If your assets are spread out all over the place, you've got to spend a lot of money to deal with those scattered assets. Our assets are scattered out everywhere. If you're in Folsom, those assets are concentrated. So you got a wastewater treatment plant and a potable water treatment plant, and you got a distribution system, and it's concentrated, and they're serving, 30,000, 40,000 homes off of those two plants. On top of that, they got maybe one pump. So just like I said, our electric bill is huge. We have more employees. We've got people running all over this county all the time dealing with stuff. Because we got some, like George said, we got assets that go back to the 1850s. So we got assets that weren't fixed, that haven't been fixed, if you read my report. The reality is, you want to hear the real dark truth? And I'm sitting down later, once this drought stuff is over, I'm sitting down with the chief of operations and the chief engineer. And we're going to sit down with this plot map. This is EID. We're going to sit down and we're going to go through this, and we're going to find out about all of this backlog, how much of our assets are on the verge of collapsing, like the 4 flumes collapsed last year and the tunnel collapse. What is it going to take to actually put this district in a functional state where your operations each year, all you're paying is your maintenance and operation and replacement of assets when they reach the end of life? And what you've got, somebody asked me if I was going to use this. You've got 2 lines. You've got our normal CIP budget. These are assets that have to be repaired, maintained, and replaced if we didn't have any kind of a backlog. If this would be a normal CIP budget to keep the operation running. But we've got, and I've been told, it's about $120 million. I think it's more than that. There's another line up here. And that line is this backlog of stuff that's been left undone. And it kills us. It kills us. We just got hit for nearly $1 million on 3 pumps up in the Camino area. Every time one of these damn pumps goes out in Folsom, it's $350,000. We've got flumes that are falling apart. I've walked on the flumes. I've seen the assets. This is not something that staff is telling me. I spent my first year, if you read the report, I went everywhere. I've seen pretty much everything. I still got some stuff to see, but I've seen it. I know it's falling apart. I know. They wanted me to walk on some of the flumes. I said, no way. I'm not going out there. It's a little 1 by 2.
1 by 2 by 12. That's what you want.
Yeah, 2 by 12.
They wouldn't pass OSHA today.
Yeah, and you're like, and there's a little wooden thing, and when you're walking on it, it's nah. So
limited to 1 person at a time.
So there's a gap here of about $120 million. I'm going to sit down with them. I want to know exactly what it is. Because we've got to get rid of this. Because this is what keeps driving our rates. And what will happen is we'll say, okay, we're not going to do anything about this. We're going to put it off. And then what happens is we don't raise rates, we kick the can down the road, and then we get rate rebound. Then all of a sudden we've got to do it. We go into debt to do it. We've got to do it. We don't have a choice. And so then we get 15% rate increases. Mm-hmm. So the only way this district is going to really have its act together is when this line comes down and these 2 lines converge and we're functioning like a district should function. To do that, we've got to bring things up to speed, up to where they need to be.
You keep building on it, you keep repairing that and rebuilding it.
It's Band-Aids. Some of this stuff is held together with baling wire and bubble gum.
I've seen it, yeah.
So
when we build something now,
on it,
we build it with a minimum of 50 to 60 year lifespan. With good maintenance, you probably get, 75, 80 years out of it. And so once it's done, I don't think anyone in this room is going to be around when it's needs repair again. But our point is that 1999, there's a report by the existing board then, I got there in 2001, that right then and there, they identified $199 million worth of repairs, and that didn't include Project 184. Right then in 1999, and we've had to do exponential kind of stuff. And that was just to bring up the existing facilities and assets up to standard. Because the state kept hammering them. The district paid $100,000 fine to the one time. Because they did, and I represent the ag community and everything else, but a lot of the old thought processes were patch it up, it'll get by till next year, and the chickens had come home to roost. And that's why we've got this plan, strategic plan, we call our CIP, where we fix this. Unfortunately, we got adjusted here and there when the Esmeralda Tunnel collapsed, take money out of this thing, move it over here. We publish that report every year. We actually spend about 70 to 80% of it. When we do it, we don't spend it all every year because for a variety of regulatory stuff, other things, other processes and things, whatever. But it's a horribly expensive business. We're driven by regulatory stuff that would drive any normal business crazy. And most businesses aren't crazy enough in California anyway. I'd say that California never met a tax or a regulation they didn't like. And they sit down there in the Golden Dome and dream up all of these other crazy damn things that we gotta live with. Unfortunately, the legislature passes something. Remember the septic tank thing a couple of years ago? Now this was done, they had a problem, I think, in Santa Monica. They were having a sewer septic problem in Santa Monica, okay? So instead of just saying, let's take care of the Santa Monica sewer problem, septic tank problem, one size fits nobody in California, they just said the whole damn state has to, by every 5 years, you're gonna have your septic tank checked by an official. Then you create a cottage industry of septic tank inspectors, and then you try to fix it a year later and say, what the hell is this all about? They go to the legislature and we hired all these guys, we got all this equipment, we can't just shut this down, and then it just feeds on itself. Your answer about the state of Jefferson, that might, I don't know, but
Yeah, that would help.
it's just crazy. Tim Leslie used to be our senator and assemblyman, and I had a real good working relationship with Tim and spent a lot of time with him traveling around. And he told me one year they had 2,762 bills that came through the legislature. He said, I have no way in hell knowing what all of these things are, and I have to depend on my staff. And sometimes we just say yes and hope the governor vetoes it if it's crazy, unless it's something really extraordinarily nutty. But they just keep coming with this stuff.
You were talking, I want to finish about the cost.
regulations was that for?
Well, it was one legislative session, 2,762 bills. This was in 2002 when he was still in the legislature. But they just introduced these things.
Back to Steve's question again, so the cost. So then on top of that, because of where we discharge our wastewater, we have to treat our sewer water to tertiary levels. Now, all these people down the hill that are laughing at you about your sewer bill, theirs is about to quadruple or even go higher. Because there's a new bill that says everybody has to treat to tertiary levels. So you complain about your sewer bill here. The reason is we have to treat our sewer water pretty much that's our recycled water. The water we use is recycled, that's what we discharge. That's pretty much potable water in LA. So it's a lot more expensive to treat our wastewater. Whereas if you're in Sacramento or you're in Folsom, they treat to a primary level and discharge. We're told how much we're told that we have to discharge so much. We could do so much more with our recycled water, but they tell us that we have to discharge this recycled water into Deer Creek and into Carson Creek because we have to keep those creeks flowing when those creeks went dry every year long before there were wastewater treatment plants. So all that water is flowing down these creeks that used to go dry when it could be watering lawns in Serrano. So it's much more expensive for the sewer. It's much more. When you were talking about the ag rate, when the ag thing first came out, what they did is The reality is the Central Valley Project was created to provide water to Central Valley farmers. It was never meant to provide water for residents. When Sly Park was built, it was part of the Central Valley Project. We bought it out of the Central Valley Project. The water in Sly Park was supposed to be for ag. 87% of the water was supposed to go to ag, the rest was supposed to go to residential. Well, El Dorado County started growing up, residential started using the water. They finally got to the point where we had ditches and we had untreated water going to farmers, and we had residents in those areas. So we were going to have to either put in a dual system where we fed the farmers raw water and we fed the residents potable water, or else use one system. So that's Title IX. That's when we went to the farmers and said, look, we'll give you potable. Now, this decision that was made a long time ago, long before George and I think it was a stupid decision, and it played out to be a stupid decision. We should have put in a dual system, just like we do with recycled water. We should deliver raw water to the farmers. We should deliver potable water to the residents. But we didn't make that decision. This is what went down. So a deal was struck between the farmers and EID that they would provide them potable water at the same cost as raw water. Well, in those days, and I talked to Herb DeHaas about this, and he said, well, in those days, he said, we flocculated it, we threw some chemicals in it, and we put it in a pipe, you know? It didn't cost anything to process the water. You know what it costs to process water today? So that differential between how much it costs to deliver you potable water versus raw water, which wasn't very much when this deal was struck, it was negligible. Well, now it costs us a lot more to deliver potable water. But what are we going to do with our ag community? If we put our ag community on residential rates, say goodbye to Apple Hill, say goodbye to $440 million of revenue, say goodbye to $7.5 million in tax revenue, and you know what's going to happen with that land?
Houses.
You think those farmers are just going to sit there? They're going to sell that land to developers. Those developers are going to pour tons of money into the political system. You're going to get supervisors that are going to okay developments, and you're going to see the western part of the county move to the eastern part of the county.
What do you mean earlier when you said we have some of the best water around?
No, is it?
It comes right out of the snow, man. It's melted snow. And it runs down, it gets purified running down those creeks. One problem we've got is Giardia, the deer poop. And birds fly over and stuff like that.
So I keep hearing rumors about that Governor Brown is now signed something that they'll start putting meters on private individuals' wells.
We don't know exactly.
Well, actually, believe it or not, California, who normally is the first one to come up with regulatory, is the last one of the 16 of the 17 western states that do not monitor groundwater meters. I don't know how that it's in the legislation. It's passed. How we're not involved with it. We don't deal with groundwater. I don't want to deal with groundwater. That's not our issue. The last damn thing I want to do is be out here having somebody check your meter on your well.
And what are we going to do about it?
But if we're forced to do
You're gonna
it,
get run off, that's.
I mean
I just wondered how they're going to enforce.
I want to make a comment because I think we're probably getting running out of time. But I'm going to tell you, water rights. We've had some discussions about water rights and water sales. I predict within 10 years or a lot sooner, we will be trading water rights on the commodity exchanges. Water is becoming such a precious commodity, especially in the West, that we'll be trading water rights, and we'll, instead of negotiating with Westlands or whomever, we'll say, we've got 5,000 acre feet to deliver and put it to the highest bidder.
Go right to the Chicago Board of Trade.
That's what they do in Australia.
You know, the last thing I want to say is, and the well thing is a segue into that, is we have a whole problem here in El Dorado County. We don't have an aquifer.
Right.
All of the wells in El Dorado County are fractures, and it's runoff and trickle down. When you're in a drought and there's no runoff and there's no trickle down, wells go dry. We think we've got about 1,000 people right now whose wells are dry. And if you go to our tanks, you will find water trucks lined up there every morning They're buying water from us, they're taking it to these people whose wells are dry, they're filling their tanks, and they're charging them more than we're charging. On top of that, we've got probably close to 60,000 people in this county that are on wells. So when you're talking about the smug water and what it's needed for and what's going on, we don't have to build another house. We don't have to put another seed in the ground. With the way the wells are going in this county, and especially with a prolonged drought, we're gonna need every drop of that water for those 60,000 people out there in the county that are basically unserved. So I think that's a good place to end. And well, I don't know, George.
Well, I'm not in any rush.
I'll stay here as long as you guys wanna stay here.
Yeah, I'll be here till
I'd love to talk.
midnight if you wanna be.
Yeah, in case you can't tell, I love to talk about
California
water.
reducing a lot of its regulations.
I'm sorry?
You see California, the state of California reducing a lot of its regulations.